What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks. My name is Jonas, and with me, as always, is Mr. Night Night David Fuchs.
It was nice. It was, I don't know, it was nice to hear to hear the intro just there. So I'm very excited. And what's going on?
Well, you know, November is over. March, here we come. Another CFP cycle in the books. Man, what is this? Our sixth, seventh cycle doing this show?
It's got to be
I
at
think.
least six because I think it's coming on 2 years. So I would think it's at least six.
What are what?
I don't know the exact number.
Well, according to our show notes, we're 189 episodes in. Damn, that's a lot.
And it's usually like what, 30-ish per cycle. So yeah, I think we're
Yeah.
probably on the sixth if I had to
Yeah,
guess.
I think we started in March of 23.
Yeah, so that would make sense. And now we're
That
doing our
sounds that sounds
yeah.
about right. Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's incredible. Well, on to our third March cycle. And we talk about this every cycle, but um this is kind of getting interesting and I would love to hear your take on this. Um Getting started studying,
Hmm.
kind of tough.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the hardest things for a lot of people is to get it going. What do you typically tell other advisors that are saying, "Hey, David, I know you do this podcast. I know you have your CFP. How did you get it going?" Like, what do you typically tell people at the beginning of the studying? Like, what do you tell them? What do you expect? What should I be doing?
It's definitely tough. And I also want to throw this out there, by the way. This episode, I know we record these, as you guys know, a couple weeks in advance, but this is coming out on the 13th of December. And I just want to point out that and this episode's about what happens when what you should expect when you first start studying. My cycle with Joe started on the 14th of December. So I'm coming up on the exact 3 year anniversary from when I officially started working with you to study for the exam. So I just want to throw that out there as a little tidbit. But I mean, listen, like when you first start, it's very exciting because it's a new endeavor. It is, well, and I think it's a little different for the first time and then the second time. I think the second time, if you're, or even the third time, if you're a retest taker, I think it's more business like. I think you're like, all right, let's get down to business. Let me get going, and let's take care of this. When it's the first time that you're taking the exam, it's very exciting because like I said, it's a new endeavor. You're excited about um,
Just the
the new,
newness of it.
just the newness, the new challenge. And it's all you're gonna learn all these new things. And by the way, you're still wide-eyed at that point. You don't know
Yeah.
exactly how much like intense this thing's gonna be.
Yeah.
So like that's one of the most exciting times, aside from passing the exam. That's one of the most exciting times that you're gonna have.
I
So
agree with that. I
yeah,
think it's very, very exciting to learn it.
and you're motivated. There's a excitement to it, and you're gonna really, really go above and beyond and crush the first couple weeks
Yeah.
because you're gonna be like, oh, like there's nothing that's thrown you off to that point. You haven't gotten hit in the face with some of the difficulties and the intensity of the exam, so you're just cruising along, working hard, going above and beyond, putting 110% in, and that's how the first couple weeks goes.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think if it's like a lot of people in those first couple weeks are going, "Oh, if you're requiring 2 hours, I'll do three," because
Yeah,
it's exciting, it's new.
right.
And I, and it's not like you're doing a bad thing per se. It's just like I want to show up and give 110% right from the beginning. Do you think that's the right thing to do, though?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I wouldn't say it's like the wrong thing. I mean, it's obviously you don't want to get too above the fray and then ultimately like crash really hard. Um, but just like with everything with this process, like one of the things that we like the themes of, all right, what are the tenets of this podcast? We talk about what the process is
Right.
and the intensity and what to expect. and the highs and the lows and the this and the that. I think it's just part of it. I think it's like, yes, like ideally, do you want to stay a little bit more even keeled so you don't get too high and then crash early? Yeah, I guess so. I suppose like that would optimize the process for you if that's what you're looking to do. But my advice for people would just be just embrace it. The first couple weeks, you're going to be
Yeah.
super excited. It's like going to college for the first couple weeks. It's a whole new light. It's a whole new thing. It's a new new world, and just embrace it. I mean, again, is it the best thing? Maybe not, and I'm sure you would probably say definitely not. But it's part
Yeah.
of the process. Just embrace it.
I think that the beginning of your studying is the time to set a precedent. Okay. And what that means is, I'm going to give my 3 hours every day, regardless. And that 3 hours is not 4 hours, and the 3 hours is not 2 hours. I tend to like it where you start to set the precedent from the beginning and you start off slow because that excitement is great, but it also ends up being kind of like going back to the gym and being really, really excited. Like, oh, I'm gonna get in
Well,
shape.
well, I think part of it is that that's when you're probably going to have the most energy
True,
and enthusiasm
sure.
in the beginning
And I think you got to
because
control it a little bit though, David,
for
because
sure, 100%. Yeah.
like you gotta know that going back into the gym with a lot of excitement, you're gonna walk out of the gym so sore. And the last thing that you want to do is make your second or third week of the process so painful because you've kind of started, you got so excited, you did so much, and then you end up doing nothing week three. I think that the most important part, and I'm not saying that being excited or doing a little bit more, those are not bad things by any stretch of the imagination. There's far worse things that you can do. But I do think it is the time that you need to be the most in control because you got to tone down some of the excitement and tone down some of the nerves and start setting the precedent because at this point you are setting the precedent for your entire study experience. And if your study experience is 4 hours one day, 1 hour the next, or 4 hours one day and 2 hours the next, and or 4 hours one day or 6 hours one day, and then I don't do anything for 2 days, that's more than likely how the rest of your study process is going to go. So I like to set the precedent. Like when I go back into the gym, I'm starting off slower. I'm going to go in, I'm going to work out for 30 to 45 minutes, and then I'm going to let my body adjust. And, if you have the luxury of having some additional time, you're starting 4 months out and you have that luxury of ramping up, then take advantage of that luxury. If you don't have the advantage of ramping up, then set the precedent from day one of being consistent and not going, I'm going to start at 4 hours and then I'm barely getting anything in the middle because we know that the beginning is exciting and where you're going to be most ramped up. The end is exciting because the end is near. That middle part, and that's what we're ideally training for, is that middle part. And I think
Hmm.
setting that precedent right at the beginning is super important because if you're not used to sitting for 3 hours at a time consistently, when the material gets tough, that's when you're going to be most distracted because you didn't
Hmm.
set that precedent from the beginning, right? Like it's easy for me to get through a workout that has, 5 push-ups, 10 sit-ups, and 15 squats, no problem. Or when I'm squatting 135 pounds on the bar because that's easy. Okay, do that for tens, no problem. Okay, when that bar starts going to 315, if I didn't do all the stuff right at the beginning and learn how to properly stretch and warm up my body and then be able to like properly sit into a proper squat without going crazy, that middle part becomes very emotionally just a roller coaster.
Hmm.
And we don't want to do that in the middle because that's the time where you want to be ramping up, not starting to feel like, oh my God, this is because we know that that part is a roller coaster anyway. And I and
Hmm.
this is and I think this is where you introduce the concept of the middle eight, right?
In the middle eight. Yeah.
right? So if for people who haven't heard that before, can you just tell them what that is?
Well, it comes from it's a football philosophy,
Right.
and a lot of coaches would tell you that the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half often determine the outcome of the game. The middle eight. It's the middle 8 minutes of the entire game. It's literally the middle of the game.
Right.
Um, and that lesson applies, or you could apply that to your studies as well. Now, it's not technically a middle eight, but any point in the middle that you can point to is probably what is going to either get you over the hump or prevent you from passing the exam. Because that's when you can lose focus easily, you can get frustrated easily, you can burn out easily, and that's where you can be derailed, or you could push through it, you can focus, and you can really grind up at that point.
Mhm.
And if you're able to push through that, you're putting yourself in a good position to pass the exam. And that goes kind of back to what you were saying about people that start up. Think about how many people in a marathon race, not that I really watch racing, but
If you did, I don't think we could be friends.
yeah, not that I
What are
watch
you doing
like,
on Saturday? Hey, David, what are you
watch.
doing this Sunday morning? I'm watching the marathon.
Yeah, right. Like, but how many people start off those marathons like, oh, these people, this individual is flying out the gates, or even horse racing you could talk about. Like right out the gate, looks like, they're crushing it, but at some point they're gonna fall back. And the people that were slow and steady and just kind of pacing themselves will eventually lap them. So it goes back to that concept of yes, like a lot of people are going to come in with a little bit of a sugar rush in the beginning of the process, but like you said, I say, I was like, I know I said, embrace it, and it's part of the process, and I still kind of think that's true, but just be wary and be aware not to get so high, because that could cause you to burn out when you're going to need that energy.
Yeah. And I think this is the time to set the habit. This is, I say this to people in class. When you're in the first quarter, I'm thinking about the fourth quarter.
Hmm.
So you got to think about whatever your pace is right now. Can I keep this pace up for 4 quarters?
Right, that's a
And if
great
you
point.
even have that inkling, like, ooh, that might be a little too, it's too fast. Trim it back down. Like, do not, the goal is we want to stay as even as possible. For most people, it's an impossibility. It is ideal that you study 3, 3, 3, 3, take a day off, 6, 3, 3, 3. It's ideal. That is an ideal scenario. And for most people, some people can do that and they can work it into their schedule depending on the intensity of their job. But for most people, that's not going to be the case. But the thing that you want to avoid, absolutely, is I studied 80 hours in month one and 20 hours in month three. Or I studied 80 hours in month one, 20 hours in month two, and 100 hours in month three. Like that middle part is essentially the most important part of this entire process is the middle part. What you do at the beginning will set the precedent. If you come out hot, you'll fizzle out, right? And again, you see this in sports all the time. Teams have amazing first quarters. They have amazing fourth quarters.
Hmm.
But the outcome of the game is by what you did in the second and third quarter of a basketball game. The
Yeah,
Knicks,
it's in the meat.
you're right.
Yeah,
The Knicks did this the other night where they got down by 22. They erase the deficit and then they fizzle out in the fourth quarter, even though they were playing
right.
great, but they end up fizzling out because, and everybody will go, oh, it's one bad play. There was a foul on the play and he shouldn't have fouled him. And that's true. But if that deficit never grew to 22, they would have never been in that position in the first place.
Right.
And two, think about how tired you are mentally and emotionally after erasing a 22-point deficit.
Hmm.
And this is exactly the same. Imagine you're, you know, 12, 13, 14 days behind. Even if you catch up, you're so tired by the point that you catch up, they end up falling behind again.
Yep. Exactly.
So
Exactly. I think, yeah.
set that precedent, set
Yeah,
that
and
precedent.
I think that's really the most important concept to take away from this conversation. Not just, yes, it is to give you guys a heads up on what to expect, how you're going to feel, what's going to be going on those first few weeks. But the lesson to really take out of this is really kind of try and set that precedent, set your pace for how things are going to be the remainder of the road towards, as you start barreling towards March. So this is going to kind of set the tone for how it's going to go.
100%. All right, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, with any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to David or myself. Please make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel so you guys can keep seeing more episodes of CFP Talks. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.